The Arizona sun doesn't just shine, it bears down on you like a physical weight, pressing the air out of your lungs. It was 104 degrees in the shade, and I was standing on the asphalt of a rest stop off Interstate 40, watching the taillights of my parents' beige SUV fade into the shimmering heat haze. I didn't blink. I didn't run after them. My hands were balled into fists at my sides, my fingernails digging into my palms so hard they drew blood. 5 minutes earlier, inside that air-conditioned car, my life had ended. Or at least, the life I knew as the dutiful daughter of the Vance family. "It's for your own good, Isabel," my mother, Brenda, had said, applying her lipstick in the rearview mirror without even looking at me in the back seat. "You're 18. You're legally an adult. But you still act like a selfish child." The selfish act she was referring to. I had refused to hand over the $2,000 I had saved from babysitting and tutoring. Money I needed for community college textbooks. Money my brother, Connor, needed because he had accidentally blown his rent money on online poker again. "He's your brother, Izzy," my father, Gary, had grumbled from the driver's seat. He never looked me in the eye when he sided with her. He just stared at the road, his knuckles white on the wheel. Family helps family. You holding out on him, it shows a lack of character. "I'm not giving him my tuition money," I had said, my voice shaking but firm. "He's 21. He can get a job." That was the trigger. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was the calm before a detonation. Dad pulled the car over sharply, tires crunching on the gravel. "Get out," Mom said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. I thought they were bluffing. I got out, clutching my small backpack that held nothing but a water bottle, a notebook, and my wallet. I thought we were just taking a breather. I thought they were going to lecture me on the side of the road. Instead, the moment my door clicked shut, I heard the power locks engage. Thud. I looked through the window. Connor turned around from the front passenger seat. He had called shotgun, as always, and smirked. It was a small, cruel twitch of the lips. He waved. Then, they drove away. I stood there for an hour, convinced they would turn around at the next exit. This is just a scare tactic, I told myself. They do this. It's dramatic. They love drama. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Figure it out. Maybe if you spend some time in the real world without us coddling you, you'll learn what responsibility means. Don't bother calling until you're ready to apologize and do what's right for this family." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. It wasn't the heat making me dizzy, it was the sudden, crushing realization of my own worthlessness in their eyes. I wasn't their daughter. I was an ATM that had malfunctioned. And because I wouldn't dispense cash, I was being discarded. I checked my bank account on my phone app. 0. My stomach dropped. While I was standing there, they had accessed the joint account, the one they forced me to keep in case of emergencies, and transferred every cent. My tuition money. My textbook money. Gone. I had $5 in cash in my wallet. A semi-truck roared past on the highway, shaking the ground beneath my canvas sneakers. I looked around. To the west, endless desert. To the east, the road they had taken. I sat down on a concrete curb near the vending machines. Most people would cry in this situation. I expected tears. I waited for the sob to rise up in my throat, for the panic attack to seize my chest. But it didn't come. Instead, a strange, cold clarity washed over me. It was like a switch had been flipped in the deepest part of my brain. For years, I had tried to be the perfect daughter. I cooked, I cleaned, I got straight A's, I saved money, I never asked for anything. And Connor. Connor failed classes, stole from Mom's purse, crashed Dad's car, and they treated him like a fragile prince who just needed one more chance. I looked at the tire tracks left by their SUV. I took my phone out. I didn't call them. I opened the camera. I took a picture of the tire tracks. I took a picture of the empty road. Then, I took a screenshot of the bank transfer notification showing the zero balance. I wasn't gathering memories. I was gathering evidence. You want me to figure it out? I whispered to the empty, scorching air. Fine. Watch me. I stood up, dusted the red Arizona dirt off my jeans, and started walking toward the service road. I wasn't Isabel the daughter anymore. Isabel the daughter died in that parking lot. The walk to the nearest town was 5 miles. 5 miles doesn't sound like much until you're doing it in triple-digit heat, with no water left, and the realization that you are homeless sinking into your bones. By the time I saw the neon sign of the Last Stop Diner, flickering against the twilight sky, my lips were cracked and my legs felt like lead. I stumbled through the door, the bell chiming above me. The place smelled of old coffee, frying bacon, and lemon floor cleaner. It was empty except for a woman behind the counter counting tips. She looked to be in her 60s, with hair the color of steel wool, and eyes that looked like they had seen everything twice. Her name tag read Margot. She looked up, taking in my dusty clothes, my sunburned face, and the slight tremor in my hands. "You look like something the cat dragged in, and the dog refused to eat," she said. Her voice was raspy, like sandpaper over gravel, but not unkind. "Water," I croaked. "Please. I have $5. She snorted, grabbed a glass pitcher, and poured a tall glass of ice water. She slid it across the counter. "Water's free, honey. Keep your money." I drank it in one go. She poured another. Then she slapped a menu down. "You look like you haven't eaten since breakfast. Grilled cheese is cheap. Fries are hot." I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. While I ate, Margot leaned against the counter, watching me. She didn't ask where my parents were. She didn't ask why a teenager was walking on the highway alone. She just watched, her eyes assessing. "You got a place to sleep?" she asked eventually. I paused, a fry halfway to my mouth. "I'm figuring it out." "That means no," Margot said. She wiped the counter with a rag. "I need a dishwasher. The last one quit an hour ago to go follow a band on tour." "Idiots. You wash dishes tonight, I let you sleep in the storage room on the cot. It's got a lock. You get breakfast in the morning. Deal?" I looked at her. It wasn't charity, it was a transaction. And for the first time that day, I felt safe. Deal. That night, my hands pruned up in the soapy water, scrubbing grease off plates. The physical labor was grounding. It stopped my mind from spiraling. At around 11 p.m., Margot came into the back. She looked grim. "So," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "I called the sheriff. Just to check the local reports. Standard procedure when a kid walks in alone." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Did you tell them I'm here?" "Not yet," she said. "But here's the thing, Isabel. There's a report already filed. Filed this morning." I frowned. "A missing person report. They actually cared?" Margot shook her head, her expression darkening. "No. A runaway report. Filed by a Brenda and Gary Vance. They claimed their daughter stole $2,000 from the family account, had a psychotic break, and ran off into the desert. They told the police you were unstable and refused to take your medication." The plate in my hand slipped. It crashed into the soapy water but didn't break. "I don't take medication," I whispered. "And they took the money." "It was my money." "I figured," Margot said dryly. "People who file reports before they even leave the county are usually covering their tracks. They wanted to make sure if you turned up dead or in trouble, legally, it wasn't abandonment. It was your mental illness." I felt sick. It wasn't just cruelty. It was calculated. They had planned this. They had preemptively destroyed my credibility, so I couldn't go to the police. If I went to the cops now, I was the crazy daughter who stole money. They were the worried parents. What do I do? I asked, looking at Margot. I was 18, alone, and framed by the people who gave birth to me. Margot walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. Her grip was strong. You stay quiet. You work. You save. You build a life so big that when they try to pull you down again, they can't reach you. You're safe here, kid. I know a liar when I see one, and you ain't it. That night, lying on the cot in the storage room, smelling of dish soap and onions, I made a vow. I wouldn't fight them now. I couldn't win now. But I would survive. And one day the bill would come due. 2 years is a long time when you're rebuilding a human being from scratch. I stayed at the last stop. I went from dishwasher to waitress, then to assistant manager. I lived in a small trailer behind the diner that Margot rented to me for peanuts. I saved every dime. I didn't buy new clothes, I couldn't afford them. That's how the sewing started. Margot had an ancient Singer sewing machine gathering dust in the storage room. One boredom-filled Tuesday, I dragged it out. I took the old, stained tablecloths the diner was throwing away and started cutting. I didn't know what I was doing at first. I watched YouTube tutorials on my cracked phone using the diner's Wi-Fi. I learned about darts, hems, and bias cuts. I turned a stained gingham tablecloth into a retro sundress. When I wore it to work, a customer, a tourist from Santa Fe, stopped me. "Where did you get that?" she asked, pointing at my dress. "I made it," I said, refilling her coffee. "Out of trash, basically." "It's stunning," she said. "I'll give you $80 for it." I froze. $80 was 2 shifts worth of tips. "You're joking." "I'm deadly serious. The cut is impeccable." That was the spark. I sold the dress off my back, literally. I went to the back and changed into my uniform. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. If I could turn trash into treasure, maybe I wasn't trash either. I started scouring thrift stores for high-quality fabrics hidden in ugly clothes. I bought oversized men's suits and tailored them into chic women's blazers. I took vintage curtains and turned them into ball gowns. I called my brand Phoenix Threads. It was cheesy, maybe, but it felt real. Rising from the ashes. Margot was my first investor. She gave me $500 for a serger machine. "Pay me back with interest," she said, gruff as always, but her eyes were smiling. I worked double shifts at the diner and sewed until my fingers bled at night. I built a website. I learned about SEO, marketing, and shipping logistics. I was obsessed. I was fueled by a mixture of passion and pure, unadulterated spite. Every time I felt tired, every time I wanted to quit, I thought of Connor smirking in the front seat. I thought of Mom's text message. "Figure it out." Oh, I was figuring it out all right. 6 months after that first sale, I hit a milestone. My bank account balance crossed $10,000. I stared at the number on the screen. It was 5 times what they had stolen from me. I opened a new savings account online. I named it the Justice Fund. I didn't know what I would use it for yet, a lawyer, a house, a private investigator, but I knew I needed a war chest. I kept tabs on them, of course. Not directly. I created a fake Facebook profile. I saw the photos. Connor getting a new car that Dad definitely paid for. Mom posing at church events, captioning photos with #blessed and #family1st. The hypocrisy made bile rise in my throat. They looked happy. They looked like they had successfully erased me. But then I saw the cracks. A post from an aunt asking about Connor's legal troubles. A vague status update from Dad about the economy and tightening belts. They were bleeding money. I knew it. Without me there to manage the budget, without my tuition money to raid, they were reverting to their baseline, financial incompetence. I focused on my work. My designs started getting attention. A minor influencer wore one of my upcycled denim jackets, and orders flooded in. I had to hire help. I moved out of the trailer and into a real apartment. One evening, sitting on the floor of my new living room surrounded by bolts of silk and velvet, I realized something profound. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. But winning in silence wasn't enough. I needed to secure my future so completely that they could never touch me again. And I remembered something from my childhood. My grandmother, Nana Rose. She had died when I was 12. She hated my father, her own son, calling him a spineless leech. I remembered her showing me a thick envelope once. "This is for you, Izzy," she had whispered. "For when you're older. Don't let them take it." I never saw that envelope after the funeral. Mom said there was no inheritance, that Nana Rose died broke. But looking at my own success, at my ability to generate wealth, I started to question everything. If they could lie about a police report, if they could steal my savings, what else had they stolen? I transferred another $5,000 into the Justice Fund. It was time to stop being a seamstress and start being a detective. Fast forward 12 years. I was 32. I lived in a loft in Tribeca, New York. Phoenix Threads wasn't just an Etsy shop anymore, it was a sustainable fashion empire. We had been featured in Vogue. We had a flagship store in Soho. I was Isabel Vance, CEO. Not Izzy the runaway. But the past has a funny way of clawing its way back into the present, usually through the glowing screen of a smartphone. It started with a TikTok trend. People were sharing their villain origin stories. My social media manager, Elise, suggested I do one. People love authenticity, Isabel. Tell them why you started Phoenix Threads. So I did. I sat in my beautifully lit studio, wearing a blazer made from reclaimed military surplus fabric, and I told the truth. I didn't name names. I didn't say Brenda and Gary Vance. I just said, when I was 18, my parents left me at a rest stop in Arizona because I wouldn't give them my tuition money. I had $5. I started sewing to survive. Now I run a multi-million-dollar company. Trash can be turned into treasure, and that includes you. The video didn't just go viral, it exploded. 10 million views in 24 hours. The comments were a mix of outrage and inspiration. Who does that to a child? Success is the best revenge, Queen. I hope those parents are rotting somewhere. 3 days later, the email arrived. It landed in my business inbox, flagged by my assistant but marked personal. The subject line was simply, "Please read, Dad." I stared at the sender name, brendavant64@gmail.com. My hands didn't shake this time. My heart didn't race. I just felt a cold, cynical curiosity. I opened it. "Dearest Isabel, a friend showed us your video. We were devastated. Is that really how you remember it? We were so worried that day. We came back but you were gone. We've been praying for you every day for 14 years. We are so proud of what you've built. We always knew you were special. That's why we were so tough on you, to push you to greatness. I'm writing because, well, we need you. Your father is very sick. The doctors say it's his heart. He might not have much time left. All he wants is to see his little girl one last time. We don't want anything from you, just your presence. Please come home. Let us be a family again before it's too late. Love, Mom." I read it twice. I dissected it like a lawyer. Gaslighting, is that how you remember it, trying to rewrite history? The lie, we came back. No, they didn't. I was there for hours. The credit, that's why we were so tough on you. Taking credit for my success despite their abuse. The hook, Dad is sick. The classic guilt trip. 14 years of silence. Not a birthday card. Not a phone call. But the moment the world finds out I'm rich, suddenly Dad is dying, and they always knew I was special. I swiveled in my Herman Miller chair, and looked out at the New York skyline. The old Isabel would have panicked. She would have booked the first flight home, ridden with guilt. But I picked up my phone and dialed a number. Not the airline. Sterling, a deep voice answered. What can I do for you, Isabel? Arthur Sterling was my corporate attorney, a shark in a three-piece suit who specialized in intellectual property, and occasionally, destroying people who tried to hurt his clients. I need a private investigator, I said, my voice steady. In Arizona. I need a full background check on Brenda, Gary, and Connor Vance. Financials, medical records, criminal history. Everything. The parents? Sterling asked. He knew the broad strokes of my story. They reached out, I said. They claim my father is dying. I want to verify the corpse before I attend the funeral. Sterling chuckled darkly. I'll have a report in 48 hours. I didn't reply to the email. I let them sweat. If they were fishing, I wasn't going to bite the hook. I was going to drain the lake. 48 hours later, I sat in Sterling's glass-walled office. He slid a thick manila folder across the mahogany desk. You were right to be skeptical, Sterling said, adjusting his glasses. I opened the folder. The first photo was of my dying father. It was dated yesterday. He was on a golf course, smoking a cigar, looking red-faced and overweight, but very much alive. According to local gossip and medical records we could access, Sterling said, Gary Vance has mild hypertension. He is not dying. In fact, he just renewed his country club membership. Of course, I muttered, flipping the page. And the financials. Disastrous, Sterling said. This is where it gets interesting. I looked at the credit reports. It was a sea of red ink. They have 3 mortgages on the house, Sterling explained, pointing to the figures. Maxed out credit cards. But the real drain is the brother, Connor. I looked at Connor's file. My brother, the golden child. Crypto scams, Sterling summarized. Online gambling. He's lost about $200,000 in the last 3 years. Your parents have been bailing him out, cannibalizing their own retirement. They are roughly 3 months away from foreclosure. So that's why they emailed, I said, closing the folder. They don't want a reunion. They want a bailout. Wait, Sterling said. There's more. Look at the property deed. I turned to the section on the house. The house I grew up in. The house Nana Rose had lived in before us. The title is a mess, Sterling said. Technically, the house is in a trust. The Rose Vance Revocable Trust. Your parents are the trustees, but the beneficiary is you. I froze. Me? Yes. Your grandmother left the house to you. Specifically you. Not your father. The terms state that upon your 21st birthday, full ownership should have transferred to you. I'm 32, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I never signed anything. Sterling pulled out a document. It was a transfer of authority, dated on my 21st birthday. At the bottom was a signature. Isabel Vance. Is this your signature? Sterling asked. I stared at the loopy, shaky cursive. It looked like someone trying to copy my high school signature but failing. No. I was in California then, working my first trade show. I wasn't even in the state. It's a forgery, Sterling said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. A clumsy one. They forged your signature to keep control of the trust, refinanced the house against the trust's terms, and spent the equity. Rage is a funny thing. When it gets big enough, it stops feeling like fire and starts feeling like ice. I felt my blood temperature drop. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had stolen my inheritance. They had lived in my house, spent my money, and bailed out their loser son with the legacy my grandmother intended for me. That's fraud, I said. Federal wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft. It is, Sterling agreed. We could send them to prison for 10 years. I sat back, tapping my finger on the fake signature. Prison was an option. But prison was impersonal. Prison meant the state punished them. I didn't want the state to punish them. I wanted to do it myself. No police yet, I said. If we arrest them, the bank forecloses on the house, and the asset is lost. I want the house, Sterling. It's the only thing of Nana Rose left. Okay, Sterling said, intrigued. What's the play? I'm going to go home, I said. I'm going to play the role of the concerned daughter. I'm going to let them think they have me on the hook. I need to get inside that house and get the original documents. And I need to secure the title. And then I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I'm going to evict them. I finally replied to my mother's email that night. Mom, I was so shocked to hear about Dad. I'm clearing my schedule. I'll be there this weekend. Let's put the past behind us. I want to help. I hit send. The trap was set. But I wasn't the prey this time. Before I booked my flight, my phone rang. Unknown number. Arizona area code. I hesitated, then picked up. This is Isabel. Isabel. It's Jessica. The name took a second to register. Jessica. Connor's high school sweetheart. They had gotten married a few years after I left. I remembered her as a quiet, mousy girl who worshipped the ground Connor walked on. Jessica. Hi. How did you get my number? I saw the video, she said. Her voice sounded brittle, tired. And I know your mom emailed you. I saw it on her iPad when I was dropping off the kids. Kids? You have kids? Too. But Connor and I are divorced, Isabel. Since last year. There was a silence. I'm sorry, I said automatically. Don't be, she let out a harsh laugh. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Listen, Isabel, you can't come back here thinking they've changed. They haven't. They're worse. I know, I said. I know about the money. I know Dad isn't dying. Do you know about the sketches? She asked. I frowned. What sketches? Years ago, maybe right after you left. Your mom found a sketchbook you left behind. Fashion designs. Dresses, coats. Really beautiful stuff. My breath hitched. My first sketchbook. I had looked for it everywhere before I was kicked out, but couldn't find it. What did she do with it? I asked, gripping the phone. She sold them, Jessica said. To a local boutique owner named Chloe. For $500. She bragged about it at Sunday dinner. Said at least the girl was good for something. Chloe used those designs to launch her bridal line. I so read. Chloe was a local rival I knew from online circles. She had always been accused of copying, but I never knew the source. My mother had sold my intellectual property for $500 just to buy booze or lottery tickets. Why are you telling me this, Jessica? I asked. Because they ruined me too, Jessica sobbed. Connor put $50,000 of debt in my name. They made me sign loan papers, said it was for the business. It was a lie. I'm working 3 jobs to feed my kids while Connor drives a new truck. I hate them, Isabel. I hate them so much. Jessica, I said, my voice softening. Do you still have access to the house? I have a key. For emergencies with the kids. I need you to do something for me. I need the ledger. Mom keeps a ledger of all the loans she gives Connor. She writes everything down. It's her way of keeping score. Is it still in the pantry inside the cookie tin? Yes, Jessica said. I saw it last week. Get it. And get any mail from the bank regarding the Rose Vance Trust. Can you do that? If it takes them down? Jessica asked. I'd burn the house down myself if my kids didn't love the backyard. Don't burn it, I said. We're going to take it. I'm coming home, Jessica. And I'm going to make sure Connor pays every cent of that $50,000 he owes you. I promise. I hung up. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for Jessica, for her kids, for Nana Rose. I looked at my reflection in the dark window of my office. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a hunter. I packed my bag. Designer clothes. Expensive jewelry. I needed to look the part. I needed to smell like money. That was the scent that would drive the sharks into a frenzy. I was going into the belly of the beast. But this time, I was the one with the teeth. I met Sterling at a private airfield in Phoenix before driving to my hometown. He handed me a briefcase. Inside, he said, tapping the leather, is the eviction notice, the cease and desist for the boutique that bought your stolen designs, and a copy of the forensic handwriting analysis proving the signature on the deed is a forgery. Heavy, I said, weighing the case. It's a nuclear bomb, Sterling corrected. Use it wisely. Remember, for the eviction to be immediate and unchallengeable, we need them to admit, on record, that they are not paying rent and have no lease agreement. We need to establish that they are essentially squatters on trust property. I'll get it, I said. I rented a car. Not a sedan. A matte black Range Rover. I drove the 2 hours to the dusty suburb where I grew up. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling. The lawn was overgrown. The welcome mat was frayed. It was a visual representation of their decline. I parked in the driveway. I took a deep breath. I turned on the voice recorder app on my phone and slipped it into the breast pocket of my blazer. I knocked. The door flew open. Brenda Vance stood there. She looked older, her face lined with bitterness that makeup couldn't hide. But the moment she saw me, or rather, saw the diamond studs in my ears and the Gucci bag on my shoulder, her face transformed into a mask of maternal adoration. Isabel. My baby. She threw her arms around me. She smelled of cheap perfume and cigarettes. I stood stiffly, patting her back. Hi, Mom. Oh, look at you. You look expensive. She pulled back, eyeing my blazer. Is this one of yours? It is. Gary. Connor. She's here. Dad shuffled into the hallway. He wasn't on death's door, but he looked rough. Puffy face, distant eyes. He hugged me awkwardly. Good to see you, Izzy. Then Connor appeared. He was wearing basketball shorts and a stained t-shirt, holding a beer. He looked me up and down, a sneer playing on his lips. Well, if it isn't the prodigal sister. Nice wheels outside. You renting? I own it, I lied effortlessly. Nice to see you, Connor. Still living at home. His smile faltered. I'm between places. Market is tough. Right. We moved into the living room. It was cluttered with QVC boxes and unopened mail. So, Mom said, clapping her hands. Sit, sit. I made a roast. We have so much to catch up on. I sat on the edge of the sofa. How are you feeling, Dad? Mom said it was your heart. Oh, Dad waved a hand vaguely. Good days and bad days. It's the stress that kills you. Stress about what? I asked, leading the witness. Money, honey, Mom sighed dramatically. The house needs repairs. Medical bills. And poor Connor, he's had such bad luck with business partners. He's a genius, really, just misunderstood. I almost laughed. Misunderstood genius. That sounds hard, I said, my voice neutral. It is, Mom leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. But now that you're here, we thought maybe, well, family helps family, right? That's what we always taught you. What did you have in mind? I asked. We have a business opportunity, Connor piped up, sitting up straighter. A tech startup. Guaranteed 1,000% returns. I just need seed capital. 500,000. And with your name attached. Investors would flock. 500,000. They didn't just want a handout, they wanted to rob me blind. That's a lot of money, I said. Ideally, Mom added, we could also pay off the mortgage on this place. It's such a burden. Then we could put the house in your name. Eventually. It's already in my name, you witch, I thought. I'll think about it, I said. But first, I need to understand the living situation here. You guys own this house free and clear, right? No other claims? Of course. Dad said quickly. It's our house. Always has been. And Connor, do you pay rent? Rent? Connor laughed. I live here. Why would I pay rent to my parents? So, no lease. No rental agreement. No, Mom said, confused. Isabel, why all the questions? It's family. Just thinking about the financials, I said, tapping my pocket where the phone was recording. If I invest, I need to know assets and liabilities. I had it. Admission of ownership fraud, since it wasn't theirs, and admission that Connor was a guest with no tenant rights. Dinner's ready. Mom announced. We moved to the dining room. I looked at the table where I used to sit in silence. Tonight, the silence would end. The roast was dry. The conversation was drier. I watched them eat. They ate like they were starving, not for food, but for the lifestyle they thought I was about to hand them. Mom kept pouring wine, her cheeks flushing. So, Isabel, Mom said, gesturing with her fork. We were thinking. If you transfer the money tomorrow, Connor can start the LLC by Monday. We can handle the paperwork for you. You're busy in New York, you don't need to be bogged down with details. I bet, I said, taking a sip of water. Like you handled the details of Nana Rose's trust. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. Dad dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against the china. What are you talking about? Mom stammered, her smile freezing in place. The Rose Vance Trust, I said calmly. The one that holds the deed to this house. The one that was supposed to transfer to me when I turned 21. You don't know what you're talking about, Connor scoffed. Nana died broke. Did she? I reached into my bag and pulled out the photocopy of the forged transfer document. I slid it across the table. Because this document says she left the house to me. And this, I pointed to the signature, is a signature dated June 12, 2012. The day I was in San Diego working a booth at a flea market. Mom turned pale. She looked at Dad. Dad looked at his plate. Isabel, Mom's voice took on a sharp, warning tone. That was paperwork. Just a formality. We were protecting the asset for you. By refinancing it 3 times? I asked. By stripping the equity to pay for Connor's gambling debts. I have the bank records, Mom. I know about the $300,000 you pulled out. It was necessary. Dad shouted suddenly, slamming his hand on the table. We raised you. We put a roof over your head. You owe us. I owe you. I stood up. I owe you for the time you left me on the side of the road in Arizona with $5. I owe you for selling my sketches to Chloe for pocket change. I owe you for the $50,000 of debt you saddled Jessica with. Jessica. Connor stood up, his face red. You've been talking to that crazy bitch. She's not the crazy one, Connor. She's the one with the ledger. I pulled out the copy of the ledger Jessica had photographed for me. I know everything. Every lie. Every stolen dollar. So what? Connor sneered, walking around the table toward me. He was trying to use his size to intimidate me, like he did when we were kids. What are you gonna do? Sue us? It'll take years. You're rich. You can afford to help your family. Don't be a greedy little brat. I'm not going to sue you for the money, I said. I know you don't have it. I reached into my bag one last time. I pulled out the red folder. I'm here for the house. You can't take our house. Mom shrieked. We live here. Correction, I said, my voice ice cold. You live in my house. And you've been living here illegally for 11 years. I tossed the red folder onto the table. It slid through the gravy stain. That is an eviction notice. Since you just admitted on tape, I tapped my pocket, that you have no lease and pay no rent, you are technically guests who have overstayed their welcome. In this state, guests can be removed immediately if the owner revokes permission. You wouldn't, Dad whispered. We're your parents. You stopped being my parents the day you drove away and left me in the desert, I said. I looked at my watch. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. The sheriff will be here tomorrow at 6 p.m. to escort anyone remaining off the property. You can take your clothes and personal items. Everything else, furniture, appliances, electronics, stay. They were purchased with the equity from my house, so legally, they are mine. You bitch. Connor lunged at me. I didn't flinch. I just held up my phone. I have a live stream running to a private server, Connor. And a bodyguard parked in the Range Rover outside. Touch me, and you go to jail for assault on top of the fraud. He froze. Get out, I said. Dinner is over. I walked out of that dining room without looking back. The sound of Connor's fist hitting the table echoed behind me, followed by the screech of a chair dragging across the hardwood floor. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally dropping the guillotine blade I had been sharpening for 14 years. Outside, the air was cooling, but the heat radiating from my face felt like a sunburn. I climbed into the back of the black Range Rover. My bodyguard, a silent giant named Marcus whom Sterling had insisted I hire, locked the doors immediately. Everything okay, Ms. Vance? He asked, watching the front door of the house through the rearview mirror. Better than okay, Marcus, I exhaled, leaning my head back against the leather seat. The clock has started. I didn't leave town. I couldn't. I needed to be close for the fallout. I instructed Marcus to drive us to the address Jessica had given me. It was a small, run-down apartment complex on the edge of town, the kind of place where the stucco is peeling and shopping carts are abandoned in the parking lot. When Jessica opened the door, she looked terrified. She was holding a baseball bat. When she saw it was me, she dropped it, and her shoulders slumped. I thought it was Connor, she whispered, letting me in. The apartment was tiny but spotless. Her 2 kids were asleep in the only bedroom. We sat on a worn-out couch that smelled of lavender and fatigue. I did it, I told her. They have 24 hours. Jessica's eyes widened. You actually evicted them? Isabel, they won't leave. You know that, right? They're like mold. They dig in. I know, I said, pulling out my phone. I showed her the live feed from the security camera I had quietly installed on the porch railing before I knocked on the door earlier. It was a small, stick-on device, completely unnoticed in the chaos. On the screen, we could see the front lawn of my childhood home. The lights were blazing inside. They aren't packing, Jessica noted, pointing at the screen. Look. She was right. Through the bay window, we could see shadows pacing frantically. Mom was on the phone, gesturing wildly. Dad was slumping in his chair. Connor was drinking. They're calling in the cavalry, I said. They're going to try to shame me into submission. They'll call the church, the neighbors, maybe even the local news. What are you going to do? Jessica asked, her voice trembling. They act like they own this town. They don't own the town, Jessica. They owe the town. And I bought the debt. I reached into my bag and pulled out a checkbook. I wrote a check and slid it across the coffee table to her. It was for $50,000. Jessica stared at it. Then she looked at me, tears welling up instantly. Isabel. I can't. This is too much. It's not charity, I said firmly. It's a debt repayment. Connor stole this from you. I'm taking it back from the equity of the house, so technically, he's paying you. Pay off the loans he took out in your name. Get your credit score back. Get out of this apartment. She broke down then, a guttural, ugly cry that had been held back for years. I sat there and held her, two women broken by the same family, finally finding the pieces to rebuild. Back on the screen, a police cruiser pulled up to the house. Here we go, I murmured. My phone rang. It was the local sheriff's department. Ms. Vance, a gruff voice asked. This is Deputy Miller. We're at your parents' residence. We received a call about a disturbance. Your mother claims you threatened her life and tried to extort money from them. I put the phone on speaker so Jessica could hear. I didn't panic. I expected this. This was the hubris phase. They thought they could lie their way out of a legal contract. Deputy Miller, I said, my voice calm and professional. I am currently with my attorney's associate. The entire interaction at the house was recorded. I did not threaten anyone. I served a legal eviction notice based on a fraudulent title transfer and unauthorized tenancy. Would you like me to email you the recording of my mother admitting they pay no rent and have no lease? There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear Mom screaming in the background, something about ungrateful brat. She admitted that? Miller asked, his tone shifting. On tape. Along with an admission of creating a fraudulent deed. I haven't pressed criminal charges yet, Deputy, because I'm generous. But if they file a false police report against me, I will have the FBI involved by morning for wire fraud. The silence stretched. Then, I heard Miller sigh. I see. I'll inform them this is a civil matter. But Ms. Vance, things are going to get ugly tomorrow. I'm counting on it, Deputy. I hung up. Jessica looked at me with awe. You're terrifying. I had to become terrifying, I said, looking at the screen where the police car was now driving away, leaving my parents standing on the porch, looking small and confused. Because being nice got me left in a parking lot. We didn't sleep that night. We watched the screen. They never packed a single box. They believed, right up until the sun rose, that they were untouchable. They thought God, or luck, or just the sheer force of their audacity would save them. They were wrong. The deadline was 6 p.m. I pulled up to the house at 5:45 p.m. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, dramatic shadows across the neighborhood. But the street wasn't empty. There were cars parked everywhere. My mother had been busy. Standing on the lawn, blocking the path to the front door, was a human wall. There was Pastor John from the First Baptist Church. There were 3 neighbors I recognized from my childhood. There was an older and I hadn't seen in a decade. They stood with their arms crossed, a phalanx of moral judgment. Behind them, my parents and Connor stood on the porch, looking smug. Mom was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Connor was filming with his phone. "This is it," I said to Marcus. "Stay close." I stepped out of the Range Rover. I was wearing a white suit today. Sharp, clean, untouchable. I wanted to look like the truth arriving to clear away the rot. "Isabel." Pastor John boomed as I approached the property line. He was a large man who used his voice like a bludgeon. "Child, stop right there. You cannot do this. Honoring thy father and mother is the first commandment with a promise." The neighbors murmured in agreement. "She's trying to throw them on the street." Mom wailed from the porch. "After everything we sacrificed. She's possessed by greed." I stopped 10 feet away from the mob. I didn't yell. I didn't lose my temper. I pulled out a small Bluetooth speaker from my bag, connected it to my phone, and turned the volume up to maximum. "Pastor John," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. "Did my mother tell you why I'm evicting them?" "There is no excuse for this cruelty," he shouted. "This is their home." "Is it?" I tapped my phone screen. "Or is it the home my grandmother left me, which they stole by forging my signature?" "Lies," Dad shouted. "Don't listen to her." "And Pastor," I continued, ignoring Dad. "Did they tell you about the mission fund donation they made last year? The $5,000? Pastor John blinked, caught off guard. That was a generous gift to the church roof fund." "That money came from my grandmother's trust," I said loudly, so the neighbors could hear. "Money that was legally designated for my education. And did you know that while they were donating my stolen money to look good in your eyes, they were refusing to pay for their own grandson's insulin?" I pointed at Jessica, who had just pulled up in her car behind mine. She stepped out, holding her son. The neighborhood went silent. Everyone knew Jessica. Everyone knew she struggled. "Ask them." I challenged the crowd. "Ask Connor why his ex-wife is working 3 jobs while he drives a truck paid for by refinancing a house he doesn't own." The wall of human shields began to crack. The neighbors looked at each other. "Is this true, Brenda?" Mrs. Higgins, the next-door neighbor, asked. "Is the house really in Isabel's name? She tricked us." Mom screamed, her mask slipping. Her face twisted into an ugly snarl. "She's a manipulator. She's been plotting this. I have the deed," I held up the papers. "And I have the receipts." I pressed play on the speaker. The audio from last night's dinner blasted across the lawn. Mom's voice: "We didn't go back. We didn't check if you were safe. It was wrong. You owe us." Connor's voice: "Rent. Why would I pay rent to my parents?" Dad's voice: "We spent the equity, it was necessary." The recording was crisp. It was damning. The pious facade crumbled in seconds. Pastor John stepped back, looking from me to my parents with horror. He realized he had been used as a prop in their con. The neighbors began to shuffle away, avoiding eye contact with my mother. "It's 6 p.m., I announced, checking my watch. Right on cue, a sheriff's vehicle turned the corner. Not Deputy Miller this time, but the sheriff himself, accompanied by 2 officers. Sterling had made some calls. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to enforce a court order. "Brenda, Gary, Connor Vance," the sheriff announced, stepping out of his car. "I have an order for immediate eviction. You have 10 minutes to collect essential personal items and vacate the premises." "You can't do this," Connor yelled, running down the porch steps. "This is my house." "Step back, son," the sheriff warned, hand resting on his belt. Or you'll be leaving in handcuffs." The crowd on the lawn evaporated. The allies they had summoned had become witnesses to their shame. Mom stood on the porch alone. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear. Not the fake victimhood, but the terror of a parasite realizing the host has cut it off. "Isabel," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Where will we go?" I looked at her. I thought about the 18-year-old girl standing in the heat of the Arizona desert with $5. "Figure it out," I said. "That's how you learn. You are amazing for sticking with this story. The climax is happening right now. If you are cheering for Isabel, hit that like button and comment the number 1. Let me know you are here for justice. Comment 1 and let's watch them leave." The next hour was a blur of chaotic justice. The sheriff's deputies stood guard as my family frantically ran through the house. I stood in the living room, arms crossed, overseeing the process. "No," I said, pointing at the 65-inch flat-screen TV Connor was trying to lift off the wall. "That stays. I bought this." Connor spat, sweat dripping down his face. "Receipt?" I asked calmly. "Show me the receipt proving you paid for it with your own earnings, not from the joint account funded by the home equity line of credit." He froze. He didn't have a job. He didn't have receipts. "Put it down," the deputy ordered. Connor slammed it back onto the bracket, cursing under his breath. It was petty. I know it was petty. But this wasn't about the TV. It was about dismantling their delusion that they were entitled to the fruits of theft. Mom was in the bedroom, sweeping jewelry into a pillowcase. "My pearls," she sobbed. "You can't take my pearls." "Those were Nana's," I said from the doorway. "She left them to me in the will. You held onto them for safekeeping. Leave them." She clutched the necklace, her knuckles white. "I'm your mother. You're stripping me naked." "You stripped me of a future," I replied. "You stripped me of safety. I'm just taking back the inventory." Slowly, the pile of what they could actually take grew pathetic. Clothes. Toiletries. A few cheap knickknacks. The expensive furniture, the electronics, the appliances, everything that made them feel middle class and respectable, was legally mine. At 7 p.m., the house was silent. The walk to their car was the longest walk of their lives. The neighbors were watching from behind their curtains. The sun had set, leaving the sky a bruised purple. Dad carried a box of clothes, his head hung low. He looked frail, finally matching the lie he had told about his health. The weight of his failure was heavier than the box. Connor walked with his fists clenched, muttering threats that no one listened to anymore. "And Mom?" Mom stopped at the edge of the driveway. She turned to look at the house one last time. Then she looked at me. "You'll rot in hell for this," she hissed. "Maybe," I said, twirling the new keys in my hand. "But at least I'll have a nice house to live in while I wait." They piled into Connor's truck. The SUV had been repossessed earlier that afternoon by the bank once Sterling flagged the fraud. The engine sputtered, a dying cough of a machine that hadn't been maintained. I watched them drive away. There was no sunset ride into the distance. Just a sad, clunky exit onto a dark suburban street. They were heading to a Motel 6 on the highway. I had paid for their first week. It was the last penny they would ever get from me. When the taillights disappeared, I didn't cheer. I didn't dance. I walked back into the house. It smelled of them, stale smoke, cheap perfume, and deceit. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the pantry. The ledger was gone, Jessica had taken it, but the outline of where the cookie tin sat was still there in the dust. I walked to my old bedroom. It had been turned into a guest room / storage for Connor's junk. My posters were gone. The marks on the doorframe where I measured my height were painted over. They had tried to erase me. I sat down on the bare mattress. The house was empty. It was quiet. It was mine. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank. The transfer from Phoenix Threads had cleared. The mortgage was paid off. The title was clean. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in 14 years, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt like possibility. I called Jessica. "They're gone," I said. "Is it over?" she asked. "No," I smiled, looking around the empty room. "It's just beginning. Bring the cleaning supplies. We have a lot of work to do." 6 months later. I stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the house. You wouldn't recognize it. The peeling beige paint was gone, replaced by a warm, inviting sage green. The overgrown lawn was now a manicured garden filled with rose bushes, Nana Rose's favorites. The welcome mat was new. Above the door a small, tasteful wooden sign read, "The Rose Shelter." I didn't keep the house for myself. I didn't need it. My life was in New York, and frankly, there were too many ghosts in these hallways for me to sleep soundly here. But I knew who did need it. The front door opened and Jessica walked out. She looked like a different person. Her hair was cut in a stylish bob, she had gained a healthy amount of weight, and her eyes were bright. She was the director of the shelter. "We're at full capacity," Jessica said, hugging me. 6 kids. All LGBTQ+ youth kicked out by their religious parents. Just like we talked about. I walked inside. The smell of stale smoke was gone, replaced by the scent of baking cookies and fresh linen. The living room, where Connor had tried to intimidate me, was now a common area with beanbag chairs, a library, and a gaming console. In the kitchen, a teenager named Leo was making a sandwich. He had been living in his car for 3 weeks before Jessica found him. "Hey, Ms. Vance," Leo waved. "Hey Leo," I smiled. "How's the job hunt?" "Got an interview tomorrow," he grinned. "And thanks for the suit." I looked at the suit hanging on the back of his chair. It was a Phoenix Threads original. This was the real victory. It wasn't about punishing my parents, though seeing them working part-time, at a grocery store, and living in a trailer park did provide a grim sense of karmic balance. The real victory was taking the weapon they had used against me, abandonment and financial control, and turning it into a shield for others. I walked to the back office. On the wall, framed in glass, was a single, crumpled $5 bill. The same bill I had in my pocket that day at the rest stop. I had kept it all these years. It used to be a reminder of my poverty. Now, it was a reminder of my price. That was the price of my freedom. $5. My phone rang. It was my mother. She still tried to call, maybe once a month. Usually to beg, sometimes to scream. I never blocked the number. I just let it ring. It was a reminder that some people don't change, they just get louder. I let it go to voicemail. "Ready for the board meeting?" Jessica asked, holding a clipboard. "Ready," I said. We walked out into the garden. The Arizona sun was shining, but it didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt warm. It felt like life. I looked at the tire tracks in the driveway, not the ones from my parents' SUV, but from the van delivering groceries for the kids. I had rewritten the ending. The girl left in the parking lot didn't just survive. She bought the parking lot. She bought the car. And she drove herself home. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive, but I hope it proves that no matter where you start, even if it's with $5 in a dusty parking lot, you can build an empire. You can find your own family. Don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel for more stories of justice and resilience. Until next time, keep rising.